Welcome back to another episode. You might think that you lack financial savvy, that you are doomed to make money mistakes. Well, we know that that is largely untrue. It might mean that we have made a lot of mistakes. It could mean that we don't have specific knowledge. And if we gain that knowledge, we'll make sound money decisions. Or, as you know, listening to this podcast, it may mean we have really buried woundings and vulnerabilities that completely interfere with us making good financial decisions. We have money scripts that interfere with us making good money decisions, and all of that is fixable. All of that can be turned around. But even people who are good with money still can slip up sometimes. One of the trickier things about making poor financial choices is they often go unnoticed or not acknowledged by the person who makes them. And sometimes they can go unnoticed for a long time. And that's because most of our money decisions have really good intentions. And even as bad as they turn out to be, in the moment they seemed like the right thing to do. So making a unwise financial decision could take a person a long time to realize the consequences of those actions, if they ever do. I can't tell you how many people that as a financial planner have said to me, I wished we had started this 10 years ago. Well, or I wish we had done things differently 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And while that can be true in the way the decisions played out, still those decisions typically were not made with the intent of malice or that I'm going to really hurt myself financially. It was made from a real wounded place, believing extreme beliefs about how money works, or simply didn't have the knowledge. So the bottom line is usually we think we're doing the right thing at the time we make these decisions. So, but what I want to focus on isn't just making bad financial decisions. I want to focus on when we make a bad financial choice that crosses the line into something unethical or illegal. And when that happens, the stakes are much higher. It's not just a money mistake anymore. It's a life-altering decision that can have serious repercussions. I was reminded of all this when I was doing some research for something, and I came across an article that I had written a number of years ago on a speech that I heard a gentleman by the name of Patrick Cruz speak, or when he gave a speech at one of the FPA conferences. He was a bond trader who made some really unethical financial decisions, and it involved the state of Oklahoma. And those decisions landed him in prison for 4 years. And if I remember right, it took him through, I think it was Puerto Rico, or being jailed there, or I'm not sure, but it was not a pleasant experience at all. And in addition to that, he lost his license to ever work in financial services again, which was his livelihood. It's what he knew. And from that, I came up with 7 key factors that led him down the path of making unethical financial decisions that completely ruined his life. So, and these are all points that he made in one way or another in his speech. I've taken them and brushed them up a little bit. So the first thing that usually starts us down this path is extreme entitlement thinking. Now, so it's not just entitlement thinking, and all of us fall into entitlement thinking from time to time. But this is entitlement thinking taken to the extreme. It is a money script that I deserve, fill in the blank, without doing anything to earn it. So when we think we are entitled, we think we are more worthy than others and deserve special privileges. Entitlement thinking is just not limited to the rich and to the wealthy. Like so many things, it doesn't really know an income class. Anyone can have entitlement thinking, regardless of their income level. And like I said, we all fall to entitlement thinking at some point in time in our lives. I mean, I have. In the past, I traveled enough to have a frequent flyer status, and you can easily become entitled to thinking that I deserve the upgrade, to to economy plus or first class. I'm entitled to board the plane first. I remember not too long ago, I switched flights to get out a little bit earlier, and I lost my economy plus seat. I think that's what it was, and ended up in the back of the plane. And I couldn't board as early as I normally could. And just that entitlement, like, oh, what is this? Wait a minute, I'm supposed to be able to board first. Stuff like that can affect us. But when we really are feeling entitled, that I deserve this, and again, without effort, or I deserve this without having to pay for it, it often stems from trauma that has happened in childhood. So we have to follow the trail, where did the entitlement thinking first appear? And typically we can trace that back to a part of ourselves that's very young and was wounded in some sort of way. And the protector part of us will step in and say, dang it, I am entitled, because if I don't get this, the pain is pretty great. It really touches that vulnerable part of us, a feeling maybe less than. There's a number of woundings that can result in pain if we don't receive a certain type of treatment. Maybe it's feelings of failure and what that means. anxiety, panic. So at the root of all this, typically, when it's really ingrained, is some type of emotional wounding. And entitlement thinking can be as financially harmful as the opposite, which is feeling undeserving of fill in the blank, no matter how hard you work or how much you achieve. So this can also be traced back to a wounding when we absolutely don't feel deserving of things that we have even legitimate claim to. So just to kind of summarize that, entitlement thinking can vary. It can vary from mild. It can vary to very severe, depending on the situation and the person. The second thing is what I call delusional optimistic thinking. This is not the same as positive thinking. It's overconfidence bias, right? We've talked about overconfidence bias and how that can really get us into trouble. Delusional thinking is one of the 13 problematic financial behaviors that can lead us into financial trouble. And what is that? Well, delusional thinking can be believing that you are a money master, that luck is always on your side, or that you're too smart to get caught. Third one is low emotional intelligence. That's low EQ. People who make really poor financial decisions often lack emotional intelligence. They typically have poor social skills. They tend to be emotionally detached from themselves or others. And that emotional detachment can lend themselves to be making unethical decisions that can harm others. And they can just be totally zoned out to that. And I also find that folks that have low emotional intelligence that make unethical financial decisions also have a strong instinct for self-preservation, even if it means hurting others. So if you wanted to read more on the social instinct or the self-preservation instinct, you can find more on that in the Enneagram. If you go to enneagraminstitute.com, I believe, there's actually an evaluation you can take there on the 3 instincts that would be enlightening. You can also take the test on the 9 character structures that are found in people. Fourth would be a one-time trivial decision. This is usually the tipping point where delusional thinking and low EQ turn into an unethical or illegal action. Up until that point, maybe there's nothing that is illegal. But at one point in time, this one-time thinking usually comes through. It's not well planned. It's not often premeditated. It's often not thought out. It's just seen as, oh, here's a one-time thing. The intentions typically are good, even though the outcome may be really bad for themselves or others. In the moment, it seems like a sensible thing to do. Which leads to number 5, rationalization. So this is what makes the one-time trivial decision into a habit. Rationalization says, one more time won't hurt because, in the rationalization, or everyone else is doing it, why not me? the thinking that, well, I just need to level the playing field here and take what's owed me. I found some research from a criminologist, Donald Cressy. It's on an NLC website. And his research showed that people tend to commit fraud when three factors are present: pressure, opportunity, and rationalization. And he refers to this combination as the fraud triangle. So the pressure, which could be any type of financial pressure, losing one's job, faced with a lot of gambling debt, faced with huge medical bills, any type of financial pressure can then seize on an opportunity. And the opportunity that we're talking about is usually something that is illegal or unethical financially. And there it is, plop. I could do this and get a lot of money. And then there's the rationalization. Well, here's why it's a really good thing or benefit in my mind, or they got the money unethically and don't deserve to have it. Or you could just go through all sorts of ways that parts of ourselves will rationalize that. Usually there's some type of polarization going on, one part of us saying, yeah, let's do this, and another part going, I don't know, I don't think this would be good. But sometimes there just seems to be no resistance within ourselves, but usually there is, and oftentimes those parts are kind of thrown out or exiled, and we follow the focus becomes on the parts that want to take the opportunity. Then sixth, this becomes normalized. The behavior becomes normalized. So once the fraud becomes a habit, the person can become just indifferent to the repeated actions. This is normal. This is what we do. And there can be less thought given to it, as, maybe there's a numbing out of emotions and a further exiling of those parts of ourselves that may be in opposition to it. And also the justifying that this is good. This is we have a really good reason to be doing this. So when we normalize it, it can be the fulfillment of entitlement thinking, of getting something for nothing. Then the seventh thing is victim thinking, and that's when a person gets caught. So the gig's up, the person is caught, and rather than taking responsibility, yes, I made those decisions, yeah, they were incredibly poor, they can often double down. And so they're doubling down on the poor decisions they made, the actions they made. They see themselves as a victim who had no control over what happened to them. So the justification steps up and becomes more intense. And they can justify that behavior because of their circumstances, even if their behaviors would not be acceptable under normal conditions. So that's kind of the path. That's kind of the slippery slope that often plays out when we're involved in unethical or fraudulent financial behavior. In his speech, Cruz cited a survey taken by college students where when asked, do you think businesses are corrupt? 75% said yes. I once talked with an IRS agent, and in our discussion, he told me 100% of businesses who succeed are doing something illegally. That just took my breath away. Because my own answer to that question is, do you think businesses are corrupt? I would say, well, maybe 5%. I don't even know that it would be that high. Certainly, there are some businesses that are corrupt. There are some people that do corrupt things. But 75%? No. And then 80% of the students believed that they would be asked by a future employer to do something unethical. Wow, 80% believe that they will be asked to do something unethical by their employer. Then they were asked whether they would comply. What percent do you think said that they would comply if it helps their career, or they are sure they wouldn't be caught? If it helps their career, they wouldn't be caught. 75% said they would comply and do something unethical. Well, that's just a little bit astounding, and yet I can understand how that can happen, because what's the first step toward fraud is pressure. And when you have pressure from an authority, it becomes harder to say no. There's fear there. There's fear of conflict. There can be the fear of losing their job. In today's economy, fear of losing your job and not getting another one probably is pretty low, since we have some of the lowest unemployment that we've seen in decades. But I think that really ratchets up when we have a poor economy, and finding another job would be really problematic. So how can we prevent ourselves from making illegal financial decisions? And this is just a good touchstone, a good checklist to ask ourselves. And I've come up with 4 different questions. And ideally we do this, we ask ourselves these questions before we make the decision. And the first one is, am I feeling financial pressure? That can be a red flag. If we're thinking of doing something and it's the financial pressure we're under that's really driving me to consider this, that it can be really telling. And it doesn't have to be something illegal. It could be gambling. Maybe I'm going to do some online sports betting. Well, am I under any financial pressure? Yes, I've just lost my job. I have a bunch of debt coming due, whatever it is. That can be a screaming red flag. If I'm thinking of doing some online gambling and I have more enough, I'm going to be using some completely discretionary income, and I view it as entertainment, that's a different picture. The second question to ask is this opportunity legal? So, with the gambling, well, of course, gambling is legal in most states. It's definitely legal in Deadwood, South Dakota. But stealing from an employer is not legal. That can land us in really hot water. The third one, and if you're wondering if it's legal or unethical, doing some research can let us know, right? The third one is if I think it is legal, if I think that it's legal, not sure, but I think it's legal, is this decision beneficial for everyone involved? Is it beneficial for me? Is it beneficial for others that will be part of or involved in this decision? Now, again, doing the online gambling is not illegal, and the decision is beneficial if it's for entertainment, right? Because I'm paying for entertainment, I'm happy, it's fun, and the people operating the betting site are making money. So from that standpoint, it is beneficial. But if I'm doing that gambling, even though it's legal, if I'm doing that gambling and it's going to take food off my kid's table, that's not so good. But in that moment, we're not going to consider that, because that confirmation bias can kick in that, hey, I got this. This is a slam dunk. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to win. The fourth one is, how would I or my loved ones feel if my decision is on the front page of my local paper? That was one that I learned from Steve Meyer, who used to be head of the South Dakota Investment Council. Very wise guy. I call him the Peter Lynch of public funds. Very smart. And this was one of his, I think he had 5 guiding principles for his employees. And this was one of them. Is this decision, is what I'm going to do, something that I would feel perfectly okay with if it was on the front page of my local paper? So I hope that can be helpful or insightful for you. The bottom line of all this is that financial decisions that aren't based on personal integrity can be really risky. So it's something that we really need to strive to check ourselves when we're making financial decisions, especially under pressure. And we also need to teach our kids how to make sound, ethical financial decisions, especially when 75% of them are anticipating they're going to be asked to do something unethical, or 80% unethical by a future employer, and 75% think that most businesses are corrupt. Okay, hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to being with you again next week. Take care.